Welcome to Leading from the Middle, which we have renamed Stuck in the Middle. Kittens? It's from Reservoir Dogs. If you have not seen Reservoir Dogs or don't like Reservoir Dogs, we also have kittens for you. A lot of kittens. Thank you for coming today. This is Kelly Tyler.
This is Courtney Saldana.
This is Jill Harris.
And that is Jen Robinson.
Hello. Thank you for coming. We are all in between layers of supervision and management. We report to people. We have people reporting to us. So we are, by definition, middle management. But if you're not, this is also full of great tips for people who are not middle management, who aspire to middle management. And the format is we're going to have a panel, back and forth panel, and then we're going to have hopefully some Q&A, and then we have an interactive element at the end. Yeah? All right, here we start. You can guess our age by these slides, by the way. All right, my first question is, what was the biggest misperception you had about being in charge?
Mine was that I could fix all the things in like a few weeks. All the things that I'd seen as a frontline person that I'm like, I could do that better. We could do that better. It's like, yay, I can fix them all now. No.
Yeah, no. And you're not actually not a magic worker.
Yeah. Is that it? All right. So keeping a neutral expression is really, really hard. I have to work on that constantly. For example, when someone says to me, at least our library isn't doing that, that is the stupidest thing to do ever. And I know we're doing it in a few months. We're just kind of figuring out how we'd make it happen. So how do you guys keep a poker face?
Drop a pin.
It's true.
Whoops.
Yep.
Recompose yourself, come back up. New face.
Yep.
I think, too, harnessing all of the different skills that you've learned. You all learn this at the reference desk all of the time with patrons who come in telling you a joke, but you're not sure it's a joke. So just using those same skills that maybe you've already honed serving the public.
And I actually practice in front of a mirror. I practice a neutral expression. I have what's called resting bitch face. My whole family has it. I know, surprise. So I practice a neutral face, which is, I'm listening to you. I'm not reacting to your news. I try and think of very bland things. So that's in the mirror, literally, because you'll think you're making a bland face, and then you look in your eyes in the mirror, and you're like, no, I'm totally not keeping a bland face. So, all right. Private eyes. Your job requires you to keep a lot of matters confidential, sometimes when you'd like to share the details. Do any of you have a situation you can talk about where you had to balance confidentiality with transparency?
Yes. For me, it's about building that trust early so that when you get to a point where you can't share something, the people that report to you or that you report to you are like, you know what? She's never done me wrong in the past, so I'm just going to trust this decision. It's less about that one instance and about having built something beforehand so that you're already on that path.
And sometimes it's just hard, and you just have to hold that info and just deal, and just find a way to deal with it. And refer to that poker face.
I think we talked to, when we were talking about this, about saying the phrase not a good fit, which is one of those very generic phrases. But if you say something like, well, it wasn't a good fit, and the person pushes at you, you can be very transparent with them and say, I'm using this phrase to stand in for something. It's information I can't tell you, so it wasn't a good fit. Wink, wink. Let them know you realize there's more to the situation, but you're telling them you're using this phrase because you can't tell them more about the situation. There's a lot of phrases you can use, but telling them why you're using it is good. True colors, Cindy Lauper. All right. When you come in to supervise a new work unit, everyone wants to tell you what needs to be fixed or how to handle your new employees. How do you get a handle on the new work assignment so you know where to start?
Why am I always first?
Because you're Courtney Saldana.
Not fair. Okay, so for me, I'm looking at Kelly's notes to remember what I said. Giving everybody the opportunity to start from zero. So don't assume, library world's very small, everybody's talking. Don't assume to believe what somebody has told you about somebody. Allow them to either impress or disappoint. Don't walk in with those preconceived notions about the people that you're now working with. Allow them to either rise to the situation or not. And then if it ever comes back to you, you can say, actually, this is why I believe this, or this is why I believe that. So everybody has the same starting place.
When I first became a supervisor, I had a lot of frontline staff, like everybody from pages to circ people, everybody inside, outside my department, come to me with a whole host of things that they'd always wanted to see be different. And often things that are really big priorities for frontline staff and people you supervise don't feel that way for you, but it's your job to make sure that people feel heard and that that you care about what they do, about what they care about. So I literally would just write everything down that people would say, because somehow seeing that visual, it helps people feel like you care. And I would just be transparent with people, I don't know that we're going to get to that within the first, month, 3 months, whatever, but I promise you I will follow up, and I have written it down.
It's on the list.
Similarly, there's a great book called The First 90 Days. I really like that book because it kind of helps you figure out what are things that you can do early on in a new position, especially if you're a brand new manager who's never managed before, but any position that you're moving into, to identify things that you can do right away to build the trust, pick off the low-hanging fruit, make some early successes and early wins to help you later on when you go to tackle the larger projects that you need to get to. And then I wanted to also mention a specific example of something that I did, which is not right for every work unit. But when I went into my work unit, all of the employees that report to me, not all, but most, work remotely over Los Angeles, which is, if you don't know, a 500 plus square mile city. So one of the things that I figured out pretty early on is that people didn't want to make themselves vulnerable by telling me what they did not know. So we created an anonymous survey monkey where people could just write in and tell me things that they wanted us to do in training sessions, what they needed to learn, so that people, no matter how long they had been in the work unit, wouldn't feel bad about saying, I actually don't know how to do that, which may be actually a core job duty. So that was really helpful. And then, when it felt right, we sunsetted it. I think it lasted about a year, and that was it.
Okay. Sometimes it's not easy being in the middle. What are some of the biggest advantages of being in this position? And I'll note that we wrote that, and then we wrote a bunch of negative things. So now we're going to do what middle managers do, which is spin those negative things into positive things.
So something that seems negative on the surface, but in my case was not, was actually really positive, was going from being a peer to managing somebody. You'd expect that to be difficult, and I did go into it kind of fearful, but we made it a positive thing by just being really open about the transition, open about the hiring process. She was still considering applying for the position, in which case we'd be competing. She ultimately didn't do that, but it still felt, like it could be fraught. But what ended up happening is that she and I had already been working together for 4 years. We'd been through a lot together. The big thing being working under a pretty toxic, and I would even go as far to say abusive boss. And ultimately, when I became a supervisor, it gave me the opportunity to kind of give her opportunities and support, and see her potential in a way that she hadn't experienced for the past literally 10 years of her career. And it's been so fulfilling to see her potential, see that she has so much to contribute to the profession, even as she nears, retirement. And I hope she doesn't retire anytime soon, because she was feeling like I'm at the end of my career, I can't go anywhere else. And it's just so not true. So yeah, that's been such a rewarding part of becoming a supervisor.
I think, just to echo Jill on that, one of my greatest joys is watching my staff succeed now. So knowing that you're giving them the resources and the tools that they need to go out there and be amazing is really, really nice. So, you come to a conference, then you watch one of your staff present on something that they've worked really hard on, and you're like, yeah, you're able to see that growth at that level. and then to go back and share that growth with the larger team so that the rest of the team sees, oh, okay, like they're really looking out for me. They have my best interest in mind. And again, that just gains you more support to be able to do more with your team.
I think too, like practical resources, I will tell you, it was like better than Christmas when I got to tell the staff that they were all getting a printer in their literacy center. They cheered and clapped. I thought, oh my God, this is amazing.
That's all we need.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of the challenges of being middle management are you know a lot, you don't know too much, there's things you can share, you can't share, but you also get this really unique view of your organization as a whole, that if you are coming up in the same organization, there's layers you never even thought of or considered. But it's great because you're still able to see what's happening. Hopefully you're in touch with the frontline staff and patrons yourself if you can be. So it is a very special place to be without sounding dorky. It's a pretty great place to be.
All right, David Bowie. As a supervisor, manager, middle management type person, how do you cultivate buy-in from frontline staff when you can't always share the full story on a new initiative or a big change up front?
I think it's really hard because you have to balance confidentiality and openness in terms of service changes, strategy shifts. You're used to gathering input with quick feedback loop when you're just supervising one person or on the front lines. But when it's bigger game, you have to kind of move forward with faith that it's going to work out without getting that immediate feedback, which can be really hard for people not to just know from their staff it's going to work because you can't talk about it yet. So that's a challenge, I guess. But I think the good way to get feedback secretly, we talked about this, is instead of saying to staff, how would you feel about having non-staffed hours for the public? Bad. Instead, you could say, what do you think, who do you think would come to the library if we had different hours? Who could we reach if we changed the way we do this? And that opens things up for staff to bring that change forward, and it's sneaky.
Yep, if you can plant those seeds in different people so that they start, people are talking about it individually, and you just keep checking in on, what's growing out of those seeds, you're going to get a frontline vision of what their biggest concerns are, and then you're ready to go when you actually may have to roll that thing out because you already know, they've already said, this might be concerning, and you're like, oh, I have a plan for that because you planted that seed early enough to get feedback so that when you roll it out, you're good to go. Ideally.
Having people involved is so key, and I think too when there's a change happening to be able to say, hey, you're right, this may not work, but hey, we're going to try it and we'll see. And if whatever doesn't work, then we'll talk about it, and see what happens after that. And I'm happy to share that with others above me.
I think another thing you can do, and this sounds kind of mean, but it's not, is keep people on their toes. Sometimes when I hear staff talking about something that I know could change in the future or has possibility to change, I like to throw in something like, well, that's assuming we're going to stay 100% on our course and not change anything, which keeps people thinking that things that might change and that you're talking about that early, you're not surprising them as much, and it gets them more, I guess, comfortable with the idea that things could change. Don't say it in like a menacing tone of voice with like, bum,
change
bum,
is
bum
coming.
in the background. Yeah.
And
But
so is winter.
just reminding people if they're complaining about shelving and say, well, if we ever had shelf ready materials, that would change. And just leave it like that.
Yeah, again, like I heard this yesterday, but thinking in terms of like widening the library lane, if you keep that at the forefront of your staff's mind, they're on their toes.
Okay. Does being in middle management offer a unique position from which to shape organizational culture? And how do you clash organizational culture as a new manager supervisor? I'm going to answer that, my own question. At my library in San Rafael, we've been going through a really cool, and I started off being very skeptical about it, but I've drunk the Kool-Aid. We've been doing a very cool process, part of an initiative called Together San Rafael, where we formed engagement groups in the library. Henry presented about it. You can ask him about it. Where we identified like 4 areas that the staff wanted to change about our organizational culture, and they basically are working groups that are working on those 4 things. Staff at all levels are on these teams, including on-call staff, pages, because realistically we have on-call staff and pages who are temps but have been there for 20 years, 30 years. So for me, that process has been using my influence to give other people influence, because organizational change, it's just one of those things that can't happen top down. It has to be grassroots for it to be successful. So for me, it was a process of letting go of authority, and giving people at all levels more authority.
I don't know. I guess I would say one more thing when it comes to culture is, and I am so guilty of this, but try not to compare your current work unit or library to other places you've been. I cannot say how many times, even in the last 5 minutes, I said, well, at SPL we did this. But that's not helpful, because that just immediately makes whoever you're talking to feel defensive. So even though I do it, I try not to. And it's good to try not to do that. If you've worked in other units, to not say, well, when we did it over here, it was great, because it's a totally different place and you don't want to shame anybody.
I want to second that, and just add that let your ideas or your things from your previous workplace stand on their own. People don't really care. Like, I used to work for where Jen worked, and I did this all the time. I'd be like, well, at the county, we ... It's like, nobody cares. But if you say, like, oh, why don't we try it this way? Let it stand on its own. Like, yeah, people don't care where it came from, but if it's a good idea, then it's a good idea. How did your professional network change when you became a supervisor manager, and who are your go-to people to vent to?
I want to answer this.
Also this table.
So my biggest tip is to make sure you have a thought partner. That can be someone inside your institution or someone outside of your institution, and be selective and intentional with who you pick. Maybe you have more than one. I have a thought partner in the audience. She knows who she is. So someone who I can safely bounce ideas off of. We always, when we get together, we're often like, circle of trust, because it's really important. Moment of silence. It's just so important to have somebody who you can trust. Sometimes you know what you want to do, but it's good to bounce it off of one other person, 2 other people before you go in and do it. So be really selective and intentional with who you talk to, and definitely don't vent down.
That is something I trained myself on early on. Always vent up. Occasionally, if you're absolutely sure it's okay, vent to the side, but never vent down. And with the caveat that, like, if you don't have a particularly good relationship or trusting relationship with your supervisor, maybe don't do this. But if you get along with your supervisor and you feel like this would work, think of administration, think of your director or your assistant director as sort of the liver of the organization. Ultimately, gripes from staff, from patrons, stop with them. And I think as long as you make it clear that you are not asking for them to solve your problems, you just want to vent so that you can then move through it, cleanse yourself and move on, and then solve the problem yourself, make use of that function.
And find your network. I mean, so much of what CLA is valuable for is meeting other people who are in the same position. So turn around, look around, check out the audience. These are other people who could be your network for the position that you guys are currently in. Okay? Find a friend outside of your building, because those are the ones who are like, wait, what? And you can go to them and say, okay, today I need sympathy. Just gripe with me. And then, okay, actually, like, this is not working. Give me some tips and tricks.
Girl, you know it's true. Ooh, 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 I love you.
Okay, so those are some tips for the ladies in the audience. So I'm going to just rapid fire. Here are some tips. Men can use some of these too. In your office, have tissues. People will cry. Have cough drops. Have deodorant. Have toothpaste and a toothbrush. Have Advil. Have tampons. Have pads. Have a Tide pin, because you will stain your clothes. You might not want to stop wearing comfortable shoes. You don't know what you're still going to have to do. But also have a change of clothes, because you don't know what you're going to have to do. You might want to have a dress or a nice suit or a pair of shoes or 2 or 3 or 4 pairs of shoes in your office. Make sure you have a pair of dark tights. You don't know when you're going to have to wear that dress when you haven't shaved your legs.
And protein bars, I just thought of always
Food,
'cause you
quick
never
food.
know.
Yes.
Yeah.
Food,
Yeah.
instant oatmeal.
Friends who will buy you food.
Your ability to impact the lives of both employees and prospective employees grows as you ascend the ranks in an organization. Is it ever okay to pull strings?
This is okay. So, pardon. Okay. So a good example of this is when you know person A is working at a branch and is not really happy there and not really at their capacity. And then you know branch D is out there and they will have an opening soon. It's totally kosher, ethically wise to have that person apply for that job. How do you, and do you pull strings? Do you tell the branch manager ahead of time, hey, this person's interested, they'd be great, they're a Spanish speaker, yada, yada, yada. Do you not? Where do you draw the line as far as communicating those kinds of things with people? And I wrote, this is a sticky situation, I don't have an answer.
I could talk about one situation I had, which is I had 2 supervisors, but one was a level 1, one was a level 2, with just the same duties, but like more quantity of duties. So that was kind of the distinguishing factor. And so we opened up the 1, but I knew the 2 was going to be opening soon. So when we went to go interview for the 1, she came in, I really liked her. I knew she was applying to a few other positions, and I was really concerned that if I turned her down for the position, she would go for something else. I actually called her on the side and I told her, you know, I think this other position's be opening. I think you would be really, really great for it, and it would be slightly promotional for you. So please just hang in there and please be patient and wait because it's going to take us some time. And I also had someone in mind for the 1. So in the end, it really worked out great for me. But yes, it was kind of putting my neck out because she could have gone to HR and complained about me, but it worked out.
So we talked about just having someone, that thought partner. I actually have someone who is a friend and a union steward at a different library system. And she's really good for bouncing things off of like what's the line here. And I think as long as you're acting with good intentions and looking towards equity and giving chances to people who might not have them, I think some of that stuff is okay. And you just have to make peace when you're hiring and firing that your choices are going to affect people's lives in a major way. And just hold that responsibility very carefully. I don't have to tell anybody this, but just to remind you that you have to make peace with that.
All right, so when you're a middle manager, you're typically not with your staff as much as you were when you were a lead person. So how do you supervise when you're not with your staff?
I'll talk about this. Like I mentioned before, I'm in the city of Los Angeles. I'm at the Central Library downtown LA. I have 21 literacy centers spread across 509 square miles of Los Angeles, and all of the staff report to us, not to the branch. So the biggest challenge is A, having them embedded, and B, having a lot of face time with those of us who are downtown. And it's just going to be a consistent challenge the entire time I'm ever going to be in this position because you can never have enough face time. So the way we try to mitigate that is we do have our all-staff meeting. I do make it mandatory. Everybody has to come down. I want them to have face time, not just with us, but with their peers. And then we do smaller regional, what we call cluster meetings that are smaller and are led more by the direct supervisors. I don't usually go. We also try to increase face time by, instead of emailing all the time, we like to pick up the phone, but even better yet, we use Google Hangout all the time. And we can do one-on-one trainings using Google Hangouts and screen sharing. So we try to do that an awful lot. It's really difficult because a lot of staff members, you know, they would like to have you come out and give them a cupcake on their birthday. If I did that, 24 staff members, it'd be bordering on I'd be violating our fraud, waste, and abuse guidelines or something because of all the time it would take me to get out there. So we have to find out other creative ways to maintain contact with people and make sure that they know how much we care and how much they are important to the organization, to us, not just as employees, but as people.
A book that I really found helpful and that gave me an epiphany on this issue was 5 Dysfunctions of a Team. And the insight part for me was realizing who your primary team is. So it's hard to not consider if you're youth services like I am, it's hard to not consider your other youth services peeps to be your primary team, to let go of that identity. But in order for me to be a supervisor to them, I had to realize that my primary team was now our leadership team, our supervisory team. And I think that makes me a better supervisor. That said, I supervise people who work the desk. I supervise people who do programs. So I work on the desk. I do programs. So that's a way that I'm still with them, even though I don't consider them to be my primary team anymore.
Yeah, you got to be in the trenches with them. The more that you can show that, yeah, you're actually dealing with those tweens who are driving you crazy on the computers, too, the more likely they're going to support rolling out whatever the fix is for that situation. So throw yourself in the trenches if you can.
Last one, which is just trust someone's view of their workload and be very radical in that trust. We all know the patronizing, do you think you can get this done by Friday? Do you need more time? But ask that honestly and with an open understanding of saying, like, literally, can you do this? Is this realistic? I'm expecting this by next Friday. Is that even doable in your world? And trust what they tell you because they know it.
All right. So how do you communicate up and communicate down without losing your mind in the middle? All right, so I'll share mine. Get your scripts together. Like, you got to have those, like, okay, I got to talk up today. This is what I'm saying. This is my phrasing. This is how I'm going to do it. Okay, I got to talk down today. This is how I'm going to do it. This is how I'm going to roll it out. The faster you can get those scripts together, the easier your life is going to be, and the more you'll come to, like, rely on them so that the people that you're talking to, both up and down your chain, are prepared for those types of statements. They're like, oh, okay, this is how they approach it. So you're also training your staff to get on board with you.
I remind people when I sense they're about to say something they may not want admin to know that might be inappropriate, that anything that is said to me could potentially be said to admin. It seems like kind of mean or distancing from people, but I think it actually is more transparent, and it allows people to have, like, a safe space, where they can vent and, to the appropriate people.
Courtney, you forgot your magic words of your scripts, which these are amazing. You want to do them?
So when I'm talking up, like, hey, so word on the street is, I don't want to throw the staff that I'm supervising under the bus. And then, yeah, exactly what Jill echoed. If a staff member comes in and I'm like, okay, you want Courtney the friend, like the one that we go out to on Fridays, or are you looking for a supervisor? Mm-hmm. And I do that going up as well. Like when I'm going into my boss and I'm like, dude, okay, I just need to talk to you as, like, past Eureka. Mm-hmm. I cannot believe this, versus like, okay, I can't solve this. Help me. Mm-hmm. So, like, preempting your conversations in that way can also get the other person that you're talking to in the right headspace to have that conversation.
And I really liked you had one for talking up and down and saying, remember, we need to sell this to so-and-so. Remember, these are the people we're talking to. One of my phrases I like is if someone's saying, well, everybody loves this, it's great. I would say things like, well, if you were sitting in a staff meeting, you might not hear the same thing. You don't have to say what meeting you heard, who said what. Just let people know that that's not communicating all the way down.
All right. So number one, communication. So what is your favorite form of communication?
All of them. All of them. I mean, we have to, by nature, do a lot of emailing in our office just to distribute things out to 24 people at once, but not everybody is all that great at reading their email as quickly as I'd like to, partly because a lot of our staff is part-time, and they're very, very busy doing things in their literacy centers. So we have to do a lot of other things. We do still reserve a part of our in-person staff meeting to repeat some things that we might have said in email. And of course, everybody knows sometimes you have to hear things more than once to actually hear them. So all of them. And I also talked a little bit already about the things that we're doing online, virtual meetings and things like that.
My favorite form of communication is email, but I would say the more important question is, what is your staff's favorite form of communication? And it's going to be all of them, like Kelly said. So basically, you need to adapt based on what you're communicating. Some things need to be communicated face-to-face, small group, one-on-one, adapt based on people's known preferences, and diversify your modes of delivery, because some people hardly ever check their email. Some people refuse to check their email, which isn't good, but that's just reality. And then some people just legit do not absorb information in written form, and you need to respect that and deliver the message in a way that's going to be meaningful to them.
And I would say any major change that's going to affect people, always tell as big an audience as you can. You want everybody to hear the same words, so there's no worries about one group heard something, another group heard something else. If I have to tell multiple groups the same information, I literally write a script of like, these are the things I'm going to say. Anything else, it's like a press conference where I'll say, if you have questions, email me, but this is what I'm telling you, and make sure you're fair and the same with everybody else to avoid any of that confusion that can happen.
Okay. So how often do you get caught up under the wheels of the bus that you were driving? And what are your best ways to be aware of those wheels coming at you?
I think I was the one that did the wheels on the bus slide, because something I always tell people right away is I am happy to jump in front of any bus that's coming for us. Like, I'm absolutely fine to say, this was my idea, I approved it, it's great, it's fabulous. I just need to know that the bus is coming. I don't care if it's a good thing or it's a bad thing, but no one likes to be caught with someone asking about something good or bad that's happening in your library that you don't know about. So literally, I will take any kind of consequence for something. I will lie. I will say that we talked about it ahead of time. I will say that whatever I need to say, but I need to know that the bus is coming so I don't just look like a deer in headlights and not know what someone is talking about.
Yeah, my motto is to protect my staff at all costs. Because if I can tell them that I'm going to protect them, then they're going to protect me back. So just having their back, but like, dude, if I'm going to like die under the bus, let me know. Which direction is the bus coming from? Give me a heads up.
There's always going to be buses, but a long-term solution, I would say, a cultural change solution, is to make failure okay so that there's less buses, so people don't feel like the bus is coming as often. Because really, failure is okay and it's necessary. It's going to happen. So use your authority or influence to create a culture where failure is okay.
All right, so none of us is perfect. So this is where we get all vulnerable. What are your weaknesses?
One of my weaknesses is staying on time, so I'm going to remind us that we need to go fast.
Yes, we're 2 minutes behind. Go.
But my actual weakness that I work with all the time is I'm super emotional person. So I practice in the mirror how to have my neutral face. Emails that are going to be kind of rambling or too much information. I never put the sender's address in until I'm absolutely sure I want to send it. I'll write things in Evernote. I have 2 or 3 people I can send an email to and say, like, does this sound terrible? Is this way too emotional to anything? And they can, I also like to write an email in the evening and then look at it again in the morning.
I struggle with being vulnerable and showing that I care personally. It's not that I don't. I really sincerely care about my staff and about what happens to them. I get really caught up in the day-to-day, though. And so, somebody I supervise is going through a breakup. My solution is I literally write notes to myself, like, remember to ask so-and-so about how they're doing post-breakup, a week later, 2 weeks later, because I do care. I just get caught up. And a book that is very helpful for this issue it's a Radical Candor. It's written by like a Silicon Valley person and uses a lot of examples, but it's very useful. And the 2 components of Radical Candor are care personally and challenge directly. Challenge directly is fine. I'm good with that. It's the showing that I care part that I'm working on, and that book was helpful.
We're going to move on because we're out of time.
Okay. Wait.
Oh, okay.
Excuse me.
Okay. Sorry. Mine is like so if y'all don't know me, I do get a definition of being very blunt. But just making sure that when I look at the staff that I'm going to approach with whatever it is, that I am very aware of monitoring who they are and how I need to speak with them to get to the result that I'm looking for. Because I cannot be full on Courtney to certain type of people, so just monitoring that and being aware of it.
I have some similar things to Jill. I have that same issue. I care deeply, but it's really hard to show that sometimes because I always show by doing. Like, I'm going to get you the printers in the literacy center. Don't you know that's why, that's how I show I care? So I do the same things as Jill. But the other thing I would say that I've definitely gotten infinitely better at is just not always having to have the last word, and also being far more measured. So if something upsets me for whatever reason, from whatever angle, making sure I take the time before I do a response, drafting something, and sitting on it for 1 or 2 days. There is almost nothing in our world that is truly, truly an emergency that requires my immediate response. Okay. Question: what do you do when you lose your direction or your passion for your work?
I can do a fast one. Mentor as much as you can. I think mentoring is really important. Even if you've just started 2 years ago, you can find someone who started a year ago. You can find someone in grad school. You can find a page who's interested in libraries. Whatever you can to be like Charlotte Bathory, right? Who like bathed in blood. That's really weird. Sorry, I'm a little tired.
Whoa, HR.
Bathe in the blood of their passion. No, but absorb that. Talk to people who are really excited about libraries who just started. Sorry. And soak it up. Like, be around people who this is new and exciting for, and you will absorb a lot of that.
And don't forget about the things you love. When I'm having a bad day, I will go out and work on the teen desk. And I'm like, yeah, give me some teenagers. Like, this is the interaction that I need right now to get away from the thing that is weighing on me.
Okay. Next question. How do you manage the rumor mill?
Shut it down.
I have a rule. It's for the rumor mill, but also for encouraging people to talk to each other about problems, which is I took over a new unit and people just poured into my office crying, and it was very emotional. There were a lot of interpersonal things that went back like 10 years. And I listened to the history. I didn't, stop people, but people could talk. My rule, I told them after a while, was you can talk about this issue with this other person to me once for as long as you need to. I'll listen to you. I'm here. But if it happens again, you need to talk to that person. You can't keep going through me. So you get like one freebie of talking about it, but next time you have this issue, I want you to go talk to the person, not me. And it worked.
Be an elementary school teacher and create signed seating and separate the toxic cliques. You all know who is the toxic clique at your library. Separate them.
Okay. When do you know it's time to move on to another position? Whether it's a lateral move internally, a move to another library system, or time to try to promote?
I think it's when you are feeling like you have done all that you can for the unit that you're currently in. So if you're like, okay, I know that there's like a chance to do X, but you're super unexcited about it, or when you've done like the yearly cycle and you've hit like your 4 big events for the last 5 years, and you're okay, here it goes. Here's the cycle again, March, and then there's June, and then there's August, and okay, look, it's March again. When you're ready for that new challenge, I literally started selling jewelry. I got no time to sell jewelry, but I was like, I need something different. Like, I'm going to challenge myself to get on social media and sell jewelry. I don't even wear jewelry, y'all. Got one ring. It makes no sense.
I actually advocate for not always moving somewhere. I think middle management gets such a bad rep from like the 1950s and businessmen and whatnot. I think if you're really good at doing middle management, you should stay here. Just like great teen librarians, if you're really good at teens, you should be with teens as much as you can. There's this pressure to always move up. If you're enjoying where you are and you're good at this role of being a back and forth and in between, keep doing it. Maybe go to a different system, have some different responsibilities if you need to, but don't necessarily feel the pressure to move up to the next level.
I have a personal example for that one. I have an 18-month-old at home, and before I got pregnant, before I had my baby, I was just gunning for like, I want to be an assistant director as soon as I can. I gotta get there. And then, yeah, my life totally changed, and now I'm like questioning why am I gunning for that? Why am I gunning to spend more time at work and less time at home? And ultimately, those things are really personal decisions. So for me, it was a work-life balance, a very personal thing. And I'm staying where I'm at for now because it's a good amount of responsibility balanced with my life.
And like headline, when we started talking about this conversation here at conference, we like spent the first hour talking about our lives as parents. So just like an open call out there, if you are a parent and you feel like you are needing support and you need to talk that out, the 4 of us at the very least are here to have that conversation with you and tell you that you can do it if you want to, but you don't have to. And that we are here to talk that out with you if you need that conversation. So sideline.
Okay. Is there a situation that you can share when frontline staff thought you knew more about a big change than you actually did? How do you manage the way that while maintaining trust?
I'm going to be really quick. So in San Rafael, we just found out 2 weeks ago, all staff found out that we are merging with our community services department. And the supervising admin team, we literally found out 30 minutes before everybody else on staff did. Henry, our interim director, is the only person that knew ahead of time. But still, even people I'm tight with on staff, people I like hang out with outside of work, do not believe me that I didn't know. And they don't believe that I didn't have a hand in it or influence in it. No matter how many times I tell them, I really honestly did not. So in my case, at a certain point, you just have to let it go and not take it personally. Because those things are about deeper issues than just one instance of, and I think I'm just going to trust that this person is going to get that I really didn't have anything to do with it.
And please share your best tip for staying true to yourself, whether it's a self-care tip or a work-related tidbit.
This is going to sound super hokey, but I just make sure I keep my voice. If I ever start reading emails that don't sound like me, and that happened a few months ago, I was reading an email and I was like, God, this is so dry. And I was like, oh, I wrote this. Wow. Okay. Like step back. Because my voice is really important to me and my voice is who I am. I want to be able to read an email or a blog post or anything else and recognize my own way of putting things, my humor, and my humanity. So that's what I do. My humanity.
For me, it's always been about finding your tribe. If you're having a rough day, find your people that you can call up and be like, Jesus, today was drinks. Find those people that you can do that with and find them stat. If you don't have them yet, let us know and we will connect you. Because you got to have people that you can talk to, or find your tribe.
Use your vacation time. When I was frontline, I would save up all my vacation time and go on like a 3-week vacation, and that was enough to sustain me for 6 months, a year. Now I do many more frequent 3-day weekends, half days. I just, as a middle manager, personally find that to be a lot more refreshing and recharging than like waiting for that one really big long vacation.
And I think have a self-care plan, and if you fail to follow it, be gentle with yourself. You try again tomorrow. Okay, let's talk about freedom. Woo! Please name 1 or 2 ways you've discovered freedom being stuck in the middle.
I love now being in a position to take risks and try new things and support my staff in doing that. And just have the opportunity to give my staff the resources that they need to thrive and to watch them do that. I mean, I see my role as a supervisor as really supporting them and serving them. So that's really satisfying to me.
It's really cool to be part of a team that, you might not be at the highest level, but you're somewhere where you can give advice and your voice is heard and you know that you can influence the direction that your library is taking. It's cool to be part of something that you know is going to last. So being part of that team.
I guess I would say having so many opportunities to make decisions in my department. I don't always have to ask for permission, but I always know that I have people there to support me if I do have questions or concerns. We have at the middle have a surprising to me, amount of influence over the direction of our library through the work units that we're managing.
Okay, mine is not inspiring, but honest. I just love the nuts and bolts. Like the higher you get within an organization, the more access you have to things. Or maybe you had access to the budget 4 years ago, but you never knew what it made. You couldn't make sense of it. You didn't know what things were about. So yeah, just finding out those weird little nuggets of like hidden money, and we get grants for this and we do this. And it's fascinating to me. I find it's very exciting. And I love to, once I learn those things, make sure I communicate those out so that people everywhere are aware of the fun little nooks and crannies.
Success.
And do you want to show the website or? Why am I doing this? I don't know. Okay. So our interactive element in true middle management style, we went back and read our description yesterday, and we're like, oh, we promise interactive. So I'm going to repurpose an idea, which is a very good thing to have in your what is it? Toolkit, yeah, pocket, briefcase, whatever. I'm going to reuse something that Genesis and I did 2 years ago at CLA, which was we did a great work-life balance session that we had people waiting afterwards for like half an hour talking. So we made a Facebook group, and it actually, I don't think it's very active anymore, but it was really active for about a year, and it was really great. We had about 60 people on there, and people really were engaged in sharing tips and things. So we have created
Sorry, the internet is terrible.
That's all right. You can find it very easily searching for Leading from the Middle, CLA 2018, any of those things. But we're all tend to be Facebook friends and on the same group, so I think it will pop up very easily for you. And yeah, let's get on there because we really do, all four of us kept talking about, why don't we have more support for this level of a career? It's a huge level. It's like, this is the beginning, this is the end, this is a big amount. And we don't have a lot of resources for that. And it's great to have assistant director meetups, but I think even better to have one that focuses on just where you are in your organization versus your title.
That's it.
Yay. It's going to load in a minute.
So if anybody, we're right up against the time, but we're happy to hang out a little bit if there's nobody waiting to get in. If you have any questions, we're happy to kind of assist in answering them.